There are stories that seem to exist just outside the edges of our maps. They're told about forgotten corners and derelict buildings being slowly reclaimed by nature, their histories fading like old paint. They're stories about places like the Pinewood Motel. You've probably seen a place just like it, a two-story relic from a bygone era, perched on the lonely shoulder of a forgotten highway, its neon sign flickering a desperate, fractured promise of vacancy. Most people drive past without a second thought, and they're the lucky ones. But for a handful of weary travelers, the story goes that the Pinewood Motel wasn't a destination, but a terminus, a place where the road just ends. For years, whispers have circulated in the darkest corners of the internet and at desolate truck stops, all telling the same tale. It's a story about a specific room, a room that shouldn't exist. Room 9. The legends claim it's a place where the laws of time and space unravel, a room that traps the souls of those who spend the night. They say the motel is a patient predator waiting for its next victim. Tonight, we are going to pull apart the infamous legend of Room 9. We'll try to separate the chilling folklore from the verifiable facts. But what if the scariest part of this story isn't what's real, but the story itself? To understand the horror that haunts Room 9, you first have to understand the legend that was built there. Section 1. The Anatomy of a Legend. The story of the Pinewood Motel is, in many ways, the story of the American highway. In the mid-20th century, thousands of these family-owned motels popped up along the nation's brand-new road system. But when the interstate system was built, these old highways began to wither. The cars stopped coming, and the motels were left to decay. The Pinewood Motel of the legend is one such relic. But does it actually exist? Our search for official records or news articles about a Pinewood Motel with a haunted Room 9 came up completely empty. There is a real, and by all accounts, very pleasant Pinewood Motel in Siren, Wisconsin, but it has no public record of hauntings or strange events and bears no resemblance to the decaying structure of the legend. The motel of our story seems to exist only in the tales told about it, a ghost story for the internet age. And yet the details are so consistent. They paint a picture of a place that feels unnervingly real. The narrative is always the same. A traveler, lost or with a broken-down car, finds themselves on a desolate road as a storm rolls in. Then a light appears in the gloom, the buzzing neon of the Pinewood Motel. The lobby is described as a place unstuck in time. Behind the counter, a clerk who is either unnervingly strange or completely absent, with a key just sitting on the counter. This is where the first building block of the legend appears, the guest log. Multiple online accounts describe the log as a disturbing artifact, allegedly containing the signatures of guests who, according to local lore, never checked out. A permanent record of their last known location. The second piece is the staff, or lack thereof. In nearly every version of the tale, the employees are evasive when asked about Room 9, saying it's out of service or unavailable. The few alleged former employees who have spoken out anonymously online tell of a shared silent rule: you don't go near Room 9, and you never give a guest that key. Why? Because the keys have a habit of disappearing, as if the room itself had summoned it. But the most disturbing part of the supposed story comes from the technology in the motel. Reports claim the old rotary phone at the front desk rings at exactly 3:03 a.m. When answered, the line is filled with static, but beneath it, a faint, distorted whisper can be heard. The call is always traced back to the phone in the empty Room 9. Then, there are the clocks. So-called former staff and guests have mentioned that the clocks in the motel behave erratically. The large clock in the lobby is said to occasionally run backward for a few minutes. It's as if time itself is thin here, stretched and distorted by whatever resides within the motel's walls. These are the facts as the legend presents them: a phantom guest log, silent staff, and bizarre electrical phenomena. Each detail is a breadcrumb leading to the same dark conclusion, that something is fundamentally wrong with the Pinewood Motel. These stories, true or not, have built a foundation of dread, a coherent mythology around a single, numbered door. They serve as a warning, but also as a siren's call, because the true horror of the legend isn't in these strange occurrences. It lies in what supposedly happens to those who ignore the warnings and step across the threshold of Room 9. Before we unlock that door, take a moment. Modern legends like this persist because they tap into a primal fear. The fear of the unknown, of being alone and vulnerable in a strange place. If you love digging into mysteries like this, the dark spaces between fact and folklore, consider subscribing to this channel. Your support lets us keep investigating these stories. Now turn down the lights. We're about to piece together the testimony of those who claim to have survived a night in Room 9, and in doing so, tell the story of one who supposedly did not. Section 2. A Night in Room 9. We'll call him Mark. He's a composite of dozens of anonymous online accounts, a stand-in for every soul who allegedly turned the key in that lock. He was driving west, running from a life that had crumbled, a failed business, a bitter breakup. He was exhausted, not just from the road, but from his own regrets. His phone's GPS had died hours ago, and a relentless, chilling rain began to fall. He hadn't seen another car for what felt like an eternity. When the Pinewood Motel's sign cut through the downpour, it felt less like a choice and more like a surrender. He pulled into the cracked asphalt lot, the only car there besides a rusted-out van. The lobby was just as the stories described, dimly lit and silent, except for the loud ticking of a large clock above the desk. On the counter, a single, tarnished brass key was laid out. The tag had the number 9 etched into it. Beside it, the guest register was open. He signed his name, noticing the previous entry was dated over a year ago. He took the key. He thought he was just taking a room. The walk down the outdoor corridor was unnerving. The lights above the other doors were mostly dark, and the hallway seemed to stretch unnaturally into the gloom. Room 9 was at the very end, half swallowed by shadow. He slid the key into the lock. It turned with a grating sound. The air that flowed out was cold and damp, smelling of wet concrete and something vaguely metallic. He stepped inside, and as the door clicked shut, the sound echoed with a soft, unnerving finality. The room was a time capsule of decay. Peeling wallpaper, a single bed with a faded brown bedspread, and a heavy wood dresser with a large clouded mirror. The only light came from a lamp on the nightstand, casting long, distorted shadows. He sat on the bed, and the springs groaned. He felt a deep exhaustion, but also a strange, prickling anxiety. The silence in the room was so absolute it felt like pressure. He tried the TV, but it only produced a hissing static that seemed to pulse with the buzzing lamp. He turned it off. The silence that rushed back in felt even louder. A shower, maybe that would help. He stepped into the small, tiled bathroom. The mirror over the sink was fogged, even though no water was running. He wiped it, but the fog returned almost instantly. He turned on the shower, and the pipes groaned, spitting out rust-colored water before clearing. It was in the shower that he heard the first sound. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Thump, thump, thump. They were soft but clear from the other side of the wall. He turned off the water. Silence. It had to be the old pipes. He quickly dried off and stepped back into the main room. The air was colder now. He could see his breath. He glanced at the mirror over the dresser, and he froze. For a split second, the reflection wasn't of the decaying room. In the mirror, the room was pristine. The wallpaper was clean, the bedspread was a crisp white, and standing behind his own reflection was the faint, shimmering outline of a woman with long, dark hair, her face hidden in shadow. He whipped around. The room was empty, decayed, just as it had been. Staring back at the mirror, his heart hammering, he saw only his own terrified face. He had to be imagining it. The long drive, the exhaustion. His mind was playing tricks on him, right? Shaken, he threw a towel over the mirror. He decided to try and sleep. He left the lamp on and lay down. He doesn't know how long he was there, drifting in an uneasy state, but he was jolted awake by a new sound, a ringing. The old beige rotary phone on the nightstand was jangling, a harsh, discordant noise. He stared at it. Who would be calling? Hesitantly, he lifted the heavy receiver. Hello? At first, only static, but then a voice broke through. A faint, distorted, wet whisper. You shouldn't be in that room. It sounded like a woman. A cold dread washed over him. Who is this? He demanded. The whisper came again, but this time it twisted into something horribly familiar. It was the voice of his ex-girlfriend, warped with a cold, spectral malice. "You always run, don't you, Mark? You always leave." He slammed the phone down, his hand trembling. This wasn't possible. A nightmare. He had to get out. He grabbed his jacket and fumbled for the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. He threw his shoulder against the door, but it was like it was welded shut. Panicked, he looked through the peephole. The hallway was gone. Instead, he saw an endless, repeating pattern of the very same hallway, stretching into an impossible, dark distance. He stumbled back from the door, a choked gasp escaping his lips. He was trapped. That's when he saw the clock on the nightstand. The red numbers were no longer telling time. They were counting down. His eyes were drawn back to the mirror. The towel had slipped to the floor. The pristine version of the room was there again. This time, the woman with long dark hair was standing by the bed, looking directly at him. Her face was pale, her eyes were dark, hollow pits, and her mouth was twisted into a soundless scream. A low hum started, a vibration under his feet. The shadows in the corners of the room deepened, coalescing into a single, tall, man-shaped figure. It had no features, just a void in the shape of a person. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The humming grew louder, the whispers now coming from every direction, a chorus of his deepest regrets. The shadow figure glided forward. Mark scrambled backward until his back hit the cold wall. He squeezed his eyes shut, hands over his ears. He felt a sudden, intense cold wash over him, and then everything went silent. When he dared to open his eyes, the room was normal. The shadow was gone. The reflection was just a reflection. He scrambled to the door, turned the knob, and it opened. The rainy hallway was back. He didn't grab his bag. He didn't grab his keys. He just ran. Section 3. The Aftermath. According to the legend, Mark, or the man we call Mark, was never seen again. The story goes that his car remained in the parking lot for weeks before being towed. When authorities supposedly entered room 9, they found it empty. The bed was neatly made. A bag with clothes and a wallet sat on the floor. He had simply vanished, becoming another name in the motel's mythical guest log. His tale, allegedly pieced together from a panicked call to a friend and frantic messages on a paranormal forum, is the climax of the Pinewood Motel legend. It weaves together every element of the folklore, the strange sounds, the ghostly apparitions, and the psychological torment. Online paranormal investigators who have studied the legend claim that Room 9 acts as a kind of temporal sink, a place where moments of intense despair have been looping for decades. They suggest the ghostly figures are psychic echoes of past tragedies, and that the room acts as an amplifier, feeding on the fear and regret of its occupants. It doesn't just show you its ghosts, it forces you to confront your own. Skeptics, of course, offer more grounded explanations. They correctly point out that there are no official records of these disappearances, no police reports, nothing. They suggest the stories are just that, stories, campfire tales for the digital age, born from the genuinely creepy vibe of abandoned roadside motels. The sounds could be old plumbing, the electrical issues faulty wiring, and the feeling of being watched. Just an overactive imagination in a dark, unfamiliar place. They argue that the legend of the Pinewood Motel is a compelling fiction, but a fiction nonetheless. And yet, the stories persist. Anonymous accounts surface every few years, each adding a new detail to the legend, keeping it alive, and evolving in the lonely backroads of our collective consciousness. So, what is the truth of the Pinewood Motel and its haunted Room 9? On one hand, we have a collection of unverifiable anecdotes that form a perfect piece of modern folklore, a ghost story tailored to our fears of isolation and decay. There's no hard evidence that this place, as the legends describe it, has ever truly existed. On the other hand, we have the chilling consistency of the accounts. The same details repeated by people with no apparent connection. The 3 knocks, the clocks moving backward, the reflection in the mirror that shows a room that isn't there. Is the Pinewood Motel just a story, an urban legend that preys on our deepest anxieties? Almost certainly. But does that make it any less terrifying? The legend of Room 9 is a place where the veil between worlds is terrifyingly thin, a room with tragedies that echo through time. And that's a story that feels real. Whether it is or not, that's for you to decide. The story of the Pinewood Motel is built from whispers and shared fears. What do you think is happening in Room 9? Have you ever stayed in a place that felt wrong? A hotel or a room that left you with a feeling you couldn't explain? Share your own story and your theories in the comments below. We read all of them, and if you want to explore more dark legends like this one, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching, and next time you find yourself on a lonely road at night, maybe just keep driving.